All right, so you crushed the MBA, you got the degree. Now for the real test. You walk in and boom, they drop a massive career-defining project right in your lap. The big question is, are you actually ready? Well, in this explainer, we're going to build the exact toolkit to make sure that answer is a very confident yes.
So let's just picture it. You're fresh out of school, you land that dream job, and your boss comes over and hands you a project that could, redefine the entire company. No pressure at all, right?
Okay, first things first. Take a breath, don't panic, you've already got the training. Now, let's give you the tools you need to slice right through that chaos.
And that's exactly what we're putting together today. Think of it as your 3-part survival kit for any huge project. You've got the map for planning, the steering wheel for control, and the fuel gauge to make sure the whole trip is still worth taking.
So let's start with part 1, drawing the map. And to make this super practical, we're going to use a case study. We'll call it Project Nomad. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to lead your company's massive shift to a totally remote-first model.
Your strategic plan, that's your map, is the master blueprint for everything. And it's so much more than just a timeline. It's got to lay out the whole schedule, show how all the different pieces depend on each other, flag the big, scary risks, and of course, give a realistic estimate of the cost and effort.
Now, to even build that map, you have to know what you're working with, your resources. And resource is just a word for any input a project needs. We're talking people, money, equipment, the whole shebang. Here's a little secret though. Organizations almost always think they have more capacity than they do. So get ready to hear, we don't have the budget for that. A lot.
Which brings us to probably the trickiest part of drawing your map, the dependency network. This is where you figure out what has to happen before something else can start. And let me tell you, it can get messy fast.
So for our Project Nomad, it's a pretty logical flow, right? You can't exactly install the new IT setup until you actually have the laptops, and you for sure can't train the staff on the new systems until that infrastructure is up and running. See how that works? One domino has to fall for the next one to go. That's your dependency network right there.
And this is where you'll hear some of that corporate jargon. So a project dossier, that's just the super detailed brief for one specific task, like getting all those laptops. A work stream, on the other hand, is when you bundle a bunch of those related tasks together, like the whole tech and equipment initiative for Project Nomad.
Okay, so you've drawn your map, the journey has begun. Now you need the steering wheel. This is all about project control. This is how you keep Project Nomad from, flying completely off the rails.
So let me ask you, what do you think the main purpose of project control really is? Is it just about bossing your team around, hitting deadlines? What's the real point?
Well, the answer is actually to bring certainty wherever you possibly can. Your job is to stamp out confusion and make the whole delivery process smoother. It's all about clarity. It is not about breathing down your team's neck until they all start updating their LinkedIn profiles.
In Project Nomad, control and action means every little subproject starts with a brief that is crystal clear. It means you're constantly pulling in updates from IT, HR, and finance. And maybe most importantly, it means you are hawk-eyed, watching the progress against your original map and fighting off scope creep. Those little "hey, can we just add this one thing" requests that will absolutely sink your project if you let them.
Okay, awesome. We have our map and our steering wheel. The last piece of the survival kit is the fuel gauge. This is your business case, and its whole job is to constantly ask, are we still sure this trip is worth it?
This is the question, the big one, that the business case has to answer at every single stage. Is our pivot to remote work still affordable? Based on everything we've learned, is it still achievable? And the million-dollar question, does it still bring real value to the company? To answer that, you have to get a handle on the costs, and they usually fall into 4 main buckets. For Project Nomad, capital costs are the big physical things, like new servers. Transition costs are all about getting people up to speed. Training, support. Management costs, that's your team's salary. And finally, benefits realization costs, that's the money you spend to actually track if this whole thing is even working.
And this is kind of what that cost breakdown tends to look like. Yeah, you expect the big capital chunk, 40% here. But the part that shocks a lot of people, that 30% for transition costs. We all get excited about the shiny new tech, but we forget the huge effort it takes to get people to actually use it. Never, ever underestimate how much you need for training and support.
And here's the most crucial point. The business case is not a document you write once and then just forget about. No way. It's a living, breathing tool.
You have to review it formally at the end of every major phase, or at the very least every 6 months. You gotta make sure you're not just pouring fuel into an engine that's already broken.
All right, let's wrap this up and pack our survival kit. What's the big takeaway from all of this?
And there you have it, your complete project management toolkit. Planning is your map. It gives you the blueprint. Control is just steering wheel. It keeps you on the road and helps you navigate around problems. And the business case? That's your fuel gauge, constantly making sure the project has a reason to exist.
Look, if you can master these 3 tools, you won't just survive that big, scary project, you're gonna absolutely nail it. This is the stuff that separates the struggling project coordinators from the truly successful strategic leaders.
So, now that you have the tools, let's put them to the test. I'm gonna throw a couple of real-world scenarios at you. Okay, scenario number 1. Bad news. Your CFO just walked out of your office and they've slashed your Project Nomad budget by a whopping 20%. Which tool do you grab first? The map, the steering wheel, or the fuel gauge? And even more important, why that one?
And for one last thing to chew on, that dependency network, that chain of what has to happen and when. At what point in a project's life is getting that network right the most critical? Right at the beginning? During the messy middle? Or maybe towards the very end? Give it some thought. Thanks for diving into this with me.